The Daxamite Empire thought they had broken us. Decades of resource extraction, of broken treaties and shattered lives, had left Earth a husk. They were wrong. They had only made us angry. Nicholas Hall knelt amidst the rubble, the gritty dust of what was once Chicago clinging to his worn gloves. He sifted through the skeletal remains of a skyscraper, the wind whistling through its hollowed-out frame like a mournful dirge. He was looking for anything usable, a scrap of metal, a power cell, anything that could keep the flickering lights on in their makeshift shelter for one more night. A flash, a scream swallowed by the roar of collapsing concrete. For a moment he saw his daughter's face, smeared with dirt but alight with laughter, before the memory dissolved back into the gray reality. He gripped a twisted piece of rebar, the cold metal a small comfort against the phantom ache in his chest. The Daxamites had taken everything. The whine of grav bikes cut through the silence. Daxamite patrol. He ducked behind a toppled slab of concrete, his heart hammering against his ribs. He peered through a crack, watching as 3 armored figures descended upon a small group of survivors huddled near the ruins of a market. A child coughed, a rattling, desperate sound. Resource quota, one of the Daxamites barked, his voice distorted by the vocoder in his helmet. Inspection. The survivors, faces etched with exhaustion and fear, offered up their meager supplies. A handful of nutrient paste packets, a dented water container. The Daxamite kicked the container aside. Not enough. He pointed his energy rifle at a small girl clutching a vial of medicine. Confiscate. Please, her mother begged, her voice cracking. She needs that. She'll die without it. The Daxamite ignored her, reaching for the vial. That was it. Something snapped inside Nicholas. He surged from behind the concrete slab, a primal roar tearing from his throat. He hurled the piece of rebar, striking the Daxamite in the helmet. The soldier stumbled back, momentarily stunned. Get out of here. Nicholas yelled at the survivors, his voice hoarse. Run. They scattered, fear lending them speed. Nicholas lunged at the stunned Daxamite, disarming him with a swift kick. He grabbed the energy rifle, the unfamiliar weight grounding him, and swung it at the other 2 soldiers. He fought with a ferocity born of grief and desperation, a whirlwind of brutal efficiency. He was skilled, surprisingly so. Years spent dismantling and repairing machinery in the ruins had given him a knack for improvised combat. But the Daxamites were stronger, faster, and their armor absorbed most of his blows. An energy blast seared his arm, the pain white-hot. He staggered, the rifle slipping from his grasp. He was going to die here. Then a streak of blue light. A stolen Daxamite transport, engine screaming, swooped down, strafing the patrol with pinpoint energy bursts. The 2 remaining soldiers crumpled, their armor offering little protection against the stolen transport's weaponry. The transport landed a few feet away, its ramp hissing open. A figure emerged, clad in Daxamite flight gear, but her stance was all wrong. Too fluid, too human. It was a woman. Get in, she said, her voice sharp and urgent. Now. Nicholas hesitated, his knees going weak. A Daxamite saving him, it didn't make sense. He scrambled into the transport, his eyes fixed on the woman as she sealed the ramp. Who are you? He demanded, his voice imbued with suspicion. Why did you do that? She turned, removing her helmet to reveal a face etched with weariness and defiance. Her eyes, the same cold blue as the Daxamite sky, held a flicker of something else, regret. My name is Selene, she said, her voice surprisingly soft. I'm a defector. I know about a vulnerability in your enemy's shields. The higher-ups seem to be ignoring it, and I'm not sure why. She looked at Nicholas, sizing him up. I need your help. I need to reach a hidden resistance cell. In exchange, I can give you a fighting chance. Nicholas stared at her, his mind racing. A defector, it sounded insane, a trap, but the alternative was certain death. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, she said bluntly. But I'm the only chance you've got, and I need you. I can't do this alone. My family, they are being held hostage. The Daxamites know what I'm planning. They have told me that if I am not heard from in the next few hours, they will be executed. The words hit Nicholas like a physical blow, the desperation in her voice, the fear in her eyes. It was real. He knew what it was like to lose everything. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and made a decision. "All right," he said, his voice grim. "I'll help you." The transport shuddered as Selene fired up the engines. Alarms blared. Daxamite fighters screamed into the sky, their energy cannons already charging. "Hold on," Selene said, her hands flying across the controls. "This is going to get rough." As Selene expertly maneuvered the stolen transport through the ruined cityscape, dodging laser fire with impossible precision, Nicholas, his mind already racing, began to jury-rig a defensive countermeasure using salvaged parts from the transport's engine. He knew he didn't fully trust her, but he understood desperation. He also knew that their actions had just painted a target on her family's backs, and had plunged them both headfirst into a war that was about to get a whole lot more personal. The whine of the damaged engine escalated to a shriek, metal protesting against impossible strain. Sparks showered from the console as Selene wrestled with the controls, her face illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. Outside, the pursuing Daxamite fighters were gaining. "We're not going to make it," she yelled over the din, her voice tight with strain. "Brace for impact." Nicholas squeezed the armrests, his fist clenched. He'd survived worse, but something about the inevitability of this crash, the feeling of utter helplessness, chilled him to the bone. The transport shuddered violently, then slammed into the ground with a bone-jarring crash. The world went black. He awoke to the smell of burning metal and the taste of blood. Selene was slumped over the controls, unconscious. He shook her gently. "Selene, wake up." She groaned and sat up, rubbing her head. "What happened?" "We crashed, Daxamites, gone for now." She pointed to a gash in the hull, but not for long. A harsh voice cut through the silence. "Don't move, hands where I can see them." Nicholas turned to see a group of heavily armed humans emerge from the shadows, their faces grim. The leader, a man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much, leveled his weapon at Selene. "Daxamite, I should execute you right here." "She's with me," Nicholas said, stepping in front of Selene. "She helped us escape." The leader, who introduced himself as Marcus, didn't lower his weapon. "And why should I believe you, engineer? We've lost too many to Daxamite tricks." "She knows things," Nicholas insisted. "Things that can help us win." Marcus studied them both for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "All right, I'll take you to the base, but she's under surveillance, every second. One wrong move." He trailed off, letting the threat hang in the air. The Resistance base was a labyrinth of tunnels carved into the earth, lit by flickering makeshift lamps. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, recycled air, and desperation. Humans moved through the tunnels with a quiet urgency, their faces etched with fatigue and drive. Marcus led them to a central chamber, where a group of Resistance members were gathered around a holographic display. He introduced Nicholas and Selene, but the reception was lukewarm. Mistrust hung heavy in the air. "She says she has intel," Marcus announced, his voice devoid of emotion. "Let's hear it." Selene stepped forward, her voice clear and confident despite the hostile glares. "The Daxamites are planning a major offensive against the northern settlements. They're moving troops and supplies through Sector Gamma. Their patrol routes are." She proceeded to lay out a detailed analysis of Daxamite troop movements, patrol routes, and resource extraction operations, her knowledge of their tactics and technology unnervingly precise. Later, Marcus briefed the Resistance on a planned raid. "We hit the supply depot in Sector 4. We need weapons, medicine, everything. It's a suicide mission, but we have no choice." Nicholas spoke up. "The transport's power core. It's damaged, but I can modify it. Overload it to create a localized energy surge, a diversion." Selene's face paled. "No, that's too risky. The Daxamites will retaliate. They'll target my family." "It's a risk we have to take," Nicholas said, his voice hard. "We need that depot." "You don't understand," Selene pleaded. "They'll kill them. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to help us, Nicholas snapped, turning away. Hours later, hunched over the damaged power core, Nicholas cursed under his breath. He'd almost finished the modifications when he stumbled upon a hidden communication log. His blood ran cold as he read the encrypted messages. The Daxamites were accelerating their resource extraction, and they were preparing to activate something called the Iron Hand Protocol. He found Marcus in the command center, relaying Seleni's intel to the other cells. "Marcus, we have a problem." "A big one?" He showed him the log. Marcus's face hardened as he read the translated messages. "Iron Hand Protocol. Planet killer. They're going to sterilize the planet." He looked at Nicholas, his eyes filled with unyielding commitment. "We hit the depot tonight. No more waiting." As Nicholas returned to the power core, he saw Selene tampering with the wiring. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She jumped, startled. I can't let you do this, not if it means my family will die." "You're sabotaging us," Nicholas roared, grabbing her arm. "You're betraying us all." "I'm trying to save my family," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "What would you do?" Before Nicholas could answer, the ground began to shake. Alarms blared, red lights flashed. Daxamites. Someone screamed. "They're attacking." The base erupted in chaos. Daxamite soldiers poured into the tunnels, firing plasma rifles. Resistance fighters returned fire, their makeshift weapons spitting defiance. Nicholas grabbed Selene and dragged her behind an overturned table. "We have to work together," he shouted over the din of battle. "If we don't, we're all dead." Using Selene's knowledge of the base's layout and Nicholas's modified power core, they fought their way through the tunnels, repelling the initial Daxamite assault. But the base was heavily damaged, and the Daxamites were regrouping for another attack. Marcus limped over to them, his face covered in blood and grime. "We have to evacuate. They'll be back with reinforcements soon." Just then, Selene's wrist console beeped. A coded message. Her eyes widened in horror. "They're moving my family to a new location, now." Nicholas stared at her, his mind racing. The raid, the diversion, her family, the Iron Hand Protocol. He and Selene stood at a crossroads. Continue with the plan, risking Selene's family, or abandon the resistance and try to save them. The choice was theirs. "We can't just leave them," Selene argued, her voice tight with desperation. "They're my family, Nicholas. And what about the rest of us?" Marcus snapped, his scarred face inches from hers. The flickering light of the makeshift command tent cast long, dancing shadows that amplified the tension. "Are your family more important than the entire resistance? Than the chance to strike a blow against the Daxamites?" Nicholas stepped between them, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Enough, we're wasting time." He glanced at Selene, his expression softening. "What did the message say exactly?" Selene swallowed hard, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. They're being transferred to Krazak, a high-security prison facility." Krazak, the name hung in the air like a death sentence. Even Marcus seemed momentarily taken aback. It was a fortress rumored to be impenetrable. Nicholas ran a hand through his short, cropped hair, a familiar gesture when grappling with a problem. "Okay," he said, his voice calm despite the storm raging within him. "Okay, here's what we do. We split the team. A small, fast strike force to attempt the rescue. The rest of us prepare for the larger assault on the depot." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You can't be serious. Krazak is a suicide mission." "It's a chance," Nicholas countered, meeting Marcus's gaze. "A slim one, but it's more than we had 5 minutes ago. Selene knows the facility. She can guide us." Marcus glared at Selene, his distrust palpable. "I'm leading the rescue team, and I'm picking the soldiers." He didn't wait for a response, barking orders at the nearest recruits. "Hall, you're with me. Let's go." As the rescue team gathered their gear, a heavy silence descended upon the remaining resistance members. Split loyalties and simmering resentment hung thick in the air. The transport vehicle, a battered Daxamite troop carrier they had salvaged months ago, rumbled across the ravaged landscape. Inside, Marcus sat opposite Selene, his gaze unwavering and intense. Nicholas sat between them, attempting to project an air of neutrality. "Tell me about Krazak," Marcus demanded, his voice low and gravelly. "Everything. Defenses, security protocols, weaknesses." Selene rattled off a list of technical specifications, her voice monotone. She spoke of laser grids, pressure sensors, and patrolling drones, but Marcus remained unconvinced. "You're holding something back," he accused, his eyes boring into hers. "I can feel it. What aren't you telling me?" "I'm telling you everything I know," Selene insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "It's a fortress, Marcus. There aren't any easy answers." Nicholas shifted uncomfortably, sensing the mounting tension. "Marcus, she's doing her best. This is difficult for her." Marcus ignored him, his focus solely on Selene. "Difficult? Your family's lives are on the line. This is more than difficult, it's life or death. So tell me the truth, Daxamite, or I swear you'll regret it." The transport crested a rise and the prison came into view. Krazak. It was a monstrous structure of black metal and reinforced concrete, filled with weapons and surveillance equipment. A palpable sense of dread washed over Nicholas. "It's protected," Selene said, her voice barely a whisper, "by a localized energy field. It'll disrupt any attempts to breach the walls." Projectiles, energy weapons, everything. Marcus swore under his breath. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I didn't think it was relevant. It's a standard security measure for high-security facilities." Nicholas frowned, his mind already racing. "An energy field. That could actually work to our advantage. If we can find the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt it, create a window for us to get inside." He paused, a spark of inspiration igniting in his eyes. "I think I can adapt my power core modification, generate a counter-frequency." While Nicholas began tinkering with the salvaged Daxamite technology, Marcus continued to pace, his agitation growing. He stopped abruptly, holding up a small data chip. "What's this?" he demanded, his voice imbued with suspicion. "I found it hidden in your pocket, encrypted communication logs." Selene paled, her eyes widening in alarm. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Marcus roared, his face contorted with rage. "These logs show communication with a Daxamite server." "You're the traitor, aren't you? You led us into a trap." "No," Nicholas interjected, stepping between them. "That's not possible. She's been risking her life for us. She wouldn't betray us." "Wouldn't she?" Marcus sneered, his gaze fixed on Selene. "She's a Daxamite. They're all liars." As Nicholas prepared to activate the counter-frequency, the ground began to tremble. A squadron of Daxamite gunships descended from the sky, their weapons trained on the transport. "We've been compromised," Marcus shouted, grabbing his weapon. "Take cover." A firefight erupted, the air filled with the deafening roar of energy weapons and the acrid smell of burning metal. Marcus and his team fought with desperate ferocity, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Daxamite commander, a hulking figure in gleaming armor, emerged from the lead gunship. "Capture the Daxamite defector alive," he barked, his voice amplified by a vocoder. "She is of vital importance to the Empire." Back at the Resistance base, as the team prepared the salvaged power core for the depot raid, a garbled message crackled over the comms. "Traitor, Krazak, attack." It cut off abruptly, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. One of the Resistance members, a young man named Ben, hesitated, his face pale and sweaty. He glanced nervously at the power core, then at the concealed comm device hidden beneath his tunic. With trembling hands, he reached out and severed a crucial power conduit, rendering the core useless. The lights flickered and died, plunging the base into darkness. The energy blast slammed into the wall beside Marcus, showering him in sparks and pulverized concrete. He staggered, clutching his side. "Damn it!" he roared, but the sound was lost in the renewed fusillade of plasma fire. Nicholas, adrenaline surging, shoved Marcus behind a stack of crates. "Get down!" he yelled, already analyzing the energy field that blocked their path. He saw the subtle flicker, the almost imperceptible drain on the prison's power grid. "It's overloaded," he shouted over the din. "Selene, how much longer?" "Almost there," she yelled back, her voice strained. She was working furiously at a console, Daxamite symbols flashing across the screen. Marcus coughed, blood staining his hand. "Nicholas, lead them, get them out." Reluctantly, Nicholas tore his gaze away from Marcus. He grabbed a discarded Daxamite energy rifle. "Cover me." He charged towards the energy field, firing bursts of energy at the junction box feeding the barrier. The air crackled with ozone. He knew the field generator was designed to withstand direct hits, but it wasn't designed for sustained overload. He kept firing, the rifle growing hot in his hands. Finally, with a violent surge, the energy field flickered and died, leaving a narrow opening just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Go now," Nicholas yelled. They scrambled through the opening, entering the labyrinthine corridors of the prison. The air was thick with the smell of recycled air and fear. Flickering emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows. Each intersection felt like a potential ambush. Daxamite guards appeared from around corners, their weapons spitting emerald bolts. Selene, moving with a desperate purpose, led the way. "This way. I know where they are." They rounded a corner and found themselves facing a reinforced cell. Inside, huddled together, were Selene's family, but a secondary energy shield shimmered in front of the cell door, humming with power. "Damn it, a backup!" Selene cried, pounding her fist against the energy barrier. Nicholas scanned the cell. "There's got to be a generator, a separate power source." He pointed down a side corridor. "That way, it'll need a diversion." Marcus, leaning heavily against the wall, pushed himself forward. "I'll do it." "Marcus, you're in no condition," Nicholas protested. "I can still draw their fire," Marcus interrupted, a grim smile on his face. "Give them something to chase." He gripped his energy rifle and limped towards the main corridor. "For Earth," he said, and disappeared around the corner, firing wildly. Nicholas and Selene exchanged a look of unshakable focus. They raced down the side corridor, following the hum of the generator. They found it in a small, heavily guarded room. Daxamite soldiers turned, their eyes widening in surprise. Nicholas opened fire, his shots precise and deadly. Selene moved with a speed and ferocity he hadn't seen before, disarming and incapacitating the guards with brutal efficiency. They reached the generator and Nicholas began working, bypassing security protocols, rerouting power. Almost, he muttered, sweat dripping from his brow. Suddenly, a klaxon blared, deafeningly loud. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "Alarm!" Selene shouted. "We've been detected." Nicholas ripped a wire from the generator, severing the power flow. The secondary energy shield flickered and died. Selene rushed to the cell door, punching in the override code. The door hissed open. Her family rushed out, embracing her tightly. But as Nicholas looked at them, he saw something was terribly wrong. Selene's younger sibling, a frail-looking child, was pale and weak, coughing weakly. "She's sick," Selene said, her voice choked with emotion. "She needs Daxamite medical technology, specialized care." The klaxon continued to blare. They had to get out. Now, they turned to retreat, but the corridor was swarming with Daxamite soldiers. The prison was on full lockdown. Then a comm crackled in Nicholas's ear. It was a panicked voice from the resistance base. "We're under attack, the Daxamites. They knew they sabotaged the power core. We're being overrun." Nicholas froze. The base, his people, they were being slaughtered. He had a choice to make. "We have to go back," he said, his voice tight with anguish. "We have to defend the base." Selene stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No, we're so close, my family." "I know," Nicholas said, his voice filled with pain, "but the base, if it falls, what about my sister?" Selene pleaded, gesturing to her ailing sibling. "She needs help, she'll die without it." "I promise you," Nicholas said, his voice firm. "I will find a way to help her. But right now we have to protect the resistance. We have to protect Earth." They fought their way back through the prison, a desperate, bloody retreat. They reached their ship, the Hope, its hull scarred and battered. They blasted off, narrowly escaping the prison complex. As they hurtled through space, a message came through on the comms. It was the Daxamite commander, his voice cold and menacing. "Nicholas Hall," the commander said, "you harbor a traitor. Selene and her family are wanted for treason against the Daxamite Empire. We know about the attack on our base. We know about the sabotaged power core. We have your traitor in custody, a trusted advisor of Marcus." The commander paused, letting the words sink in. "We will execute them publicly unless Selene surrenders herself. You have 1 hour. Nicholas stared at the comm screen, his face pale. He knew the commander was telling the truth. There was a traitor in their midst. And now he had to choose. Surrender Selene to save the resistance, or risk everything to protect her and her family. He looked at Selene, her face etched with despair. She knew what he was thinking. She knew the impossible choice he faced. With a quiet dedication, she reached for the comm panel. "I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll transmit the surrender message." She was prepared to sacrifice herself, to trade her life for the safety of her family and the future of the resistance. Selene's fingers trembled, hovering over the transmit button. The surrender message shimmered on the screen, a promise of peace bought with their freedom. But it was a lie, she knew it, and Nicholas knew it too. His hand shot out, a blur of motion, severing the connection. Sparks flew from the console as the comms system died, plunging the cramped ship into near silence. "What did you do?" Selene hissed, whirling on him, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and fear. Nicholas stood firm, his face hardened. "Surrendering you won't guarantee anyone's safety. It'll just buy the Daxamites time to crush what's left of us. We need your knowledge, Selene, your tactical insight, your understanding of their weaknesses." He gestured to the other resistance members crammed into the ship's hold. "Do you think they'd be alive if it wasn't for you?" The damaged ship, groaning under the strain of its failing engines, limped towards its destination, a remote, abandoned mining colony. Rust-colored dust swirled around skeletal mining rigs, monuments to a forgotten boom. It was neutral ground, a haven for smugglers and outcasts, a place where deals were made in the shadows and allegiances shifted with the wind. "There's a place," Selene said, her voice barely a whisper. "A hidden Daxamite medical facility not far from here. They have the technology, the only technology that can save my sibling." Her gaze was fixed on the swirling dust outside, a fragile hope flickering in her eyes. Across the stars, on the bridge of a Daxamite warship, Commander Vorlag's lips curled into a cruel smile. Intercepted their trajectory, the mining colony, a pathetic little nest of scavengers. He tapped a clawed finger on the holographic display. "Prepare an ambush. Let them think they've found sanctuary, then we'll crush them." Back on Earth, or what was left of it, the resistance base smoldered. Twisted metal and shattered concrete marked the end of their sanctuary. Bodies lay scattered amidst the debris, a testament to the Daxamites' ruthless efficiency. Marcus, miraculously alive, was pulled from the wreckage, his body broken, his breathing shallow. Under the harsh glare of a Daxamite interrogation lamp, the traitor, his face bruised and bloodied, finally broke. His voice, hoarse with pain and shame, revealed the location of the Resistance's hidden caches of weapons and supplies. But even as the Daxamites celebrated their victory, a small faction of the Resistance, led by a pragmatic survivor named Anya, slipped away into the shadows. "We can't win this fight here," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "We have to regroup, rebuild. We fall back to the secondary location. It's our only chance." As Nicholas and Selene's ship touched down on the dusty surface of the mining colony, they were met with suspicion. A group of wary smugglers, their faces etched with hardship and distrust, surrounded them. Their leader, a hulking figure named Krell, narrowed his eyes. "Daxamite tech, trouble, we don't need any of that here." Nicholas stepped forward, his voice calm despite the turmoil within. "We need repairs. safe passage to a medical facility. In exchange, we offer this. He held out a small, intricately designed device salvaged from a downed Daxamite fighter. Advanced shield disruptor technology, worth more than all the scrap on this rock. Krell's eyes widened, a flicker of greed replacing the suspicion, but before he could answer, the sky erupted in fire. Daxamite warships descended, their weapons unleashing a storm of destruction. Ambush! Krell roared, grabbing a blaster rifle. Everyone to your positions. Chaos erupted. The smugglers, caught in the crossfire, scrambled for cover. Explosions rocked the colony, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. Selene, her face grim, barked out orders in rapid Daxamite, identifying firing patterns and shield weaknesses. Focus fire on the lead ship's port engine. They're overcompensating for a damaged stabilizer. Her knowledge of Daxamite tactics proved invaluable, turning the tide of the battle, if only momentarily. News of Selene's need and the location of the medical facility reached Marcus, lying on a makeshift cot in the evac site. Summoning his remaining strength, he rasped, "Get word to the others. Selene needs help. Medical facility. Go." Meanwhile, inside the smuggler's makeshift repair bay, Nicholas worked feverishly, analyzing schematics of the Daxamite medical facility. His face grew grim. It's heavily guarded, multiple layers of security, and it requires a specific access code to enter. Selene's face was pale. The access code. It's embedded in a neural implant. Only high-ranking Daxamite officials carry them. Under the dim light of a flickering lamp, the Resistance members and the smugglers huddled together, their faces grim. Plans were drawn, risks assessed. A covert infiltration was their only option. Elsewhere in the chaos of the evacuation, Anya discovered a hidden data file. Her face paled as she read its contents. The Iron Hand Protocol, scheduled to be activated within 72 hours. Consumed by guilt and desperate for redemption, the traitor who had managed to escape crept onto Commander Vorlag's flagship. His trembling hands fumbled with the ship's engines, attempting to sabotage them. But his efforts were clumsy, desperate. He was quickly discovered, overpowered, and dragged before Vorlag. "Traitor," Vorlag spat, his eyes filled with contempt. "You will serve as an example." The traitor was publicly executed, his death a brutal warning to any who dared defy the Daxamite Empire. As the dust settled on the mining colony and the threat of the Iron Hand Protocol loomed large, Nicholas' mind raced. He saw a way, a desperate gamble, to use the impending chaos to their advantage. He needed the medical tech to save Selene's sibling, but more importantly, he needed that access code. The code that held the key to stopping the Iron Hand Protocol. He looked at Selene, his eyes filled with relentless drive. "We're going to infiltrate that facility." Dressed in stolen Daxamite fatigues, Nicholas, Selene, and a hand-picked team slipped into the medical facility. Selene keyed a sequence into her wrist-mounted datapad, triggering a localized power surge in a nearby generator. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting long, distorted shadows. A klaxon blared and Daxamite guards rushed toward the source of the disruption. "Go," Nicholas urged, his voice tight. "That buys us a few minutes." Selene nodded, leading him through sterile corridors. "My sibling is in Ward 7. Their condition, it's critical. They won't last much longer without specialized care only available here." While Selene navigated toward Ward 7, Nicholas veered toward the central control hub, his target the neural implant containing the access code to the Iron Hand Protocol. He reached the door, a shimmering energy field. He pulled out a small device, a modified data siphoner, and plugged it into the access panel. A red light flashed. Damn it, biometric lock. He hadn't anticipated this. He could hear the distant sounds of the diversion, escalating blaster fire and shouts echoing through the facility. Time was running out. "Selene, I need you," he calmed, his voice urgent. "Almost there," she replied, her voice strained. "Give me a moment." Suddenly, the energy field flickered and died. Selene stood beside him, a smoking Daxamite sidearm in her hand. "Let's go." Inside the control hub, a Daxamite official was frantically working at a console. Nicholas moved with brutal efficiency, disarming the official and ripping the neural implant from his skull. The official slumped to the floor, lifeless. As Nicholas secured the implant, a piercing alarm shrieked through the facility. They were compromised. "They know," Selene said, her violet eyes wide. "We have to move now." Even as they sprinted from the control hub, the Daxamite commander's voice boomed over the facility's comm system. "Intruders detected. Seal off all sectors. Intercept and eliminate." Nicholas activated his comm. "This is Nicholas. We have the implant. We're compromised. Request immediate diversion." A gruff voice crackled back. "Understood. We're on our way." Across the ravaged landscape, the remaining resistance forces, bolstered by the smugglers and their cobbled-together fleet, converged on the medical facility. Blasters roared and makeshift bombs exploded, turning the sterile environment into a chaotic battlefield. The Daxamite forces, caught off guard, struggled to contain the onslaught. The diversion was working. Back in the control hub, Nicholas connected the neural implant to the Iron Hand protocol control system. The interface flickered to life, displaying complex schematics and lines of alien code. "The activation sequence has already begun," he said, his voice grim. "We're too late." "Not necessarily," Selene countered, her fingers flying across the console. "I know their systems. There's a way to reroute the targeting matrix to redirect the weapon." Working in perfect synchronization, Nicholas and Selene deciphered the Daxamite code. Sweat dripped from their foreheads as they raced against time. Selene identified the override sequence, while Nicholas reconfigured the targeting parameters. "Targeting matrix locked," Nicholas announced, his voice tight with concentration. "Redirecting weapon, now." Outside, the sky pulsed with an ominous energy. The Iron Hand protocol weapon, a planet killer, was poised to unleash its fury. But instead of descending upon Earth, the energy shifted, arcing towards the heavens. On the Daxamite flagship, alarms blared as the redirected weapon slammed into its hull. The ship, the symbol of Daxamite power, buckled and broke apart in a blinding explosion. The Daxamite commander, his face contorted with rage and disbelief, lunged for the manual override, desperate to regain control. "I will not let these primitives win. He's trying to override the system," Selene shouted. "Nicholas, stop him." Nicholas, his fingers dancing across the console, initiated a remote lockout sequence. "Sorry, Commander," he muttered. "Game over." The commander screamed in frustration as the console went dead, his control severed. The flagship, crippled and burning, drifted helplessly in space before detonating in a final, cataclysmic burst. The destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the remaining Daxamite forces. Their morale shattered, their command structure in ruins. They broke formation and fled, warping out of Earth's orbit in a desperate retreat. The occupation was over. In the aftermath, a fragile peace settled over Earth. The long, arduous process of rebuilding began, aided by the smugglers and other alien species who had secretly supported the resistance. Scavenged materials were repurposed, ruined cities were cleared, and the first seeds of a new future were sown. On a hill overlooking a recovering city, Nicholas and Selene stood side by side, watching the sunrise. The sky, once choked with pollution and warships, was now a clear, vibrant blue. "We did it," Nicholas said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Selene nodded, her violet eyes reflecting the dawn. "But it's just the beginning, my people. They need to see what their empire has become. There needs to be change." Nicholas turned to her, his gaze filled with warmth. "Then we'll help them change. Both our peoples deserve a better future." He reached out, taking her hand. Their fingers intertwined, a symbol of the bond forged in fire, a testament to the day humanity said, "No more." They stood together, not just as allies, but as something more.